views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and this week I have a special guest host who is making his debut appearance here on Real Reviews. He is a fellow producer here at the Media Center. He is the host of Roundabout Sun Prairie, as well as What Are We Building? His name is Andy Schoenherr. Thanks for joining me.
Wonderful to be here, Jamison. Thank you for inviting me.
This is great. I love having new faces joining me, new dynamics.
Look, you said you were looking for new guest hosts and things, and I said, I don't know if you ever need somebody to fill in, I think, for the old guy. And then it turned out, you needed some guests. So I love movies. Happy to be here. I'm excited.
This is beautiful. Well, this is good. I would hate it if you're like, I'm not a big movie guy.
It's like, no, I don't get as much time as much as I used to, but
sure.
And of course, nobody's been going to theaters here recently, but I love movies and love talking about them. So
well, good, because we're going to do it, and I'm going to get started out with what we have on the marquee this week. First movie we have is a film called The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. What a title! It is the sequel to the 2017 action comedy about a AAA certified bodyguard by the name of Michael Bryce, played by Ryan Reynolds, who was very cognizant of safety and protecting his client, who was a hitman. Darius, played by Samuel Jackson, who was set to testify and who wasn't going to make it very easy on Bryce in the original. In this one, we pick up shortly after. Bryce is fairly messed up from the events that he just got put through. He's kind of distraught over losing his certification that allows him to be a bodyguard. He's in therapy trying to forget Darius and who he blames for his life collapsing around him. And that's when he's forced by Darius's wife, Sonia, played by Salma Hayek, to help her find Darius and get him free from some mobsters. And this is how we get the gang back together. They're captured fairly quickly by the feds and tasked with taking down a Greek billionaire, played by Antonio Banderas, who has plans to take out the power grid to most of Europe to restore Greece back to the place of power that it should be in. Pretty thin plot, but it's more based on the action and comedy amongst this cast. Andy, I'm curious first, did you see the Hitman's Bodyguard?
So I had not seen the first one, so I actually watched it last weekend just in preparation for the show because I was not familiar with the Hitman's Bodyguard. The original one. So.
Sure. Your thoughts on this film?
So this movie's not good. It's not. It's not. It is. There is the flimsiest of plots that are meant to serve, as you said, the action and the comedy, of which the action is pretty weak and the comedy is almost non-existent. It was my thoughts. I didn't hate the original as much as this one. This movie has ended up kind of like being a sequel or an advertisement for the first one, because I don't know how many people even saw the first one. It was not that big of a hit.
No, it wasn't. No, despite the stars involved, it wasn't like a huge hit. It kind of surprised me when we got the sequel.
Right. And so my question is kind of like, why did they even make this movie to begin with? It's sort of an ego vanity project, seems like, for these stars that are in it.
I mean, Samuel Jackson will make anything.
Right.
He doesn't say no.
Right.
I enjoyed the first one because I enjoyed the chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Samuel Jackson. They both play the action comedy pretty well. This one, though, I was really frustrated because it felt like each character was given like one note, and that's all they were given. Ryan Reynolds' character was just worried about getting his AAA certification.
Yeah.
That's it. Salma Hayek, total wild card, and she just wanted to have a baby.
Right.
And Darius was just doing his thing, but it was like the same jokes hammered over and over and over.
Which is the staple of any sequel, especially bad sequels, is just give people more of the same without a whole lot of originality.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of just centered on the distrust between everybody, and that was kind of it. Ryan Reynolds more or less just kind of battered and dragged along by these two psychopaths that he's with.
It bothered me. His face was like bloody or cut the entire time.
But I
appreciated
gets blood on
that the entire time, and then he never washed it off.
I did appreciate that though, because in like the Fast and Furious movies or most of these action movies, you'll watch a guy get thrown through a wall, and the next scene he's no marks on him. So I did appreciate he accumulates damage. Okay, at least there's some continuity in some of that.
But you're right. The motivation, the whole thing hinges on. It starts off with an award show for bodyguards.
Yeah.
And then this AAA certification is a big thing.
It's a big thing.
I don't know that. I didn't realize that was a thing, that bodyguards have like a society and a rating and awards. And
apparently,
if they do have that, the way they set it up or sold it didn't make it seem like it was a real thing or was very believable.
It's
and
really
that's kind of what the whole movie hinges on.
It's the movie's very uninspired. And then you bring in even like Morgan Freeman. And like Morgan Freeman, who again, I think he'll just do anything these days. He's really trading in on his name and likeness.
I wanted to look up how old Morgan Freeman is. He's got to be
37. Could you believe
that's
that?
That's what surprised me. But he's too old to be in an action movie. He's not really asked to do any stunts or anything. Really,
but he's still supposed to be like a believable, badass character in this movie. And then Antonio Banderas playing the Greek Aristotle, which... Come on. Antonio Banderas, well known for being a Spanish man.
Right. And so that put me off a little bit.
I thought that was funny.
He's Greek. He doesn't change his accent at all.
No, doesn't even try.
He's like uber Antonio Banderas, uber Spaniard.
Like if I go over the top with my accent, they'll think it's Greek.
Everybody in this movie is just hamming it up entirely. They're over the top kind of caricatures. And so I actually appreciated the fact, Salma Hayek was my favorite thing about the first one. So I was actually kind of excited to say, okay.
Yeah, she was a scene stealer in the first one.
Yeah, you're going to add in the Hitman's wife's bodyguard, which, okay, the best thing about the first one was Salma Hayek. Let's see more of her. And her and Antonio Banderas just completely over the top, just watching them have fun with it was one of the small things I enjoyed.
I mean, I appreciate that little Salma Hayek is like the scariest one in this movie.
Right.
Like she is a complete loose cannon.
She's dropping F-bombs.
Yeah,
she's out of control. You don't know what's going to happen.
I kind of appreciate that you don't know what she's going to do.
Right.
And that's fine. But I just wish there was actual, I know this is too much to ask for a movie like this, but kind of nuance to the characters or maybe giving them something to do. But there was no nuance at all to any of them. They're, like I said, they're all one-note characters.
Yeah.
And the mission was stupid. And it wasn't even one of the great, I don't want to compare it to a Bond film, but these big action travel films where they're traveling around Europe and you at least get cool locations and
right,
stuff.
I thought of movies like Ronin or The Italian Job or where they do car chase and action sequences very well, smart, there's
I didn't like the
smart
action in this one that much. I will say though,
it seemed like they ratcheted it down from the first one. I don't know if they're trying to keep a lower budget or what it was, but
chemistry between
the
three of them
in
a way.
Yes, and Samuel L. Jackson he's almost I almost saw him as like a Liam Neeson character. He's like this aging action star, but he's still the coolest guy on screen in any movie, even if he's with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
What I was reminded of is Desperado. So Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek.
Right.
And there was some Tarantino sort of influence, I thought, in the first one.
Yeah.
I saw some things, and so you're reminded of a movie like Desperado that was really innovative, clever action sequences with stars with great chemistry. That movie's probably 20 years old now.
More, I think. I think it was 98 it came out.
Yeah, but movies that have a little more depth and nuance to the relationships and the characters on a very low budget that Desperado
I mean,
was.
both of those, Banderas and Salma Hayek were fairly unknown at that point.
Yeah, and here you have this movie now that has all the studio backing and this bigger budget, and they just don't do anything with it. It's unfortunate.
I'm curious what you end up giving The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard.
So I gave The Hitman's Wife, I gave it an extra half star just because I still liked seeing these stars, doing their thing, but 1.5 stars was about all I could muster.
Kids, look
for
out.
The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard.
That's not great. That's not a recommend.
Nope. Don't waste your time.
I split down the middle. I gave it 2.5, which is just a meh. Wasn't terrible, but I wouldn't recommend. It was a mediocre action movie.
If you like dumb fun, go back and watch the first one. The first one is not that terrible, but I guess if you like that and you really liked it, you could check out the second one. But I wouldn't waste your time.
Not a fan. All right. The next film we have is our streaming spotlight, which comes to us from Disney+. It is Pixar's newest film, Luca, directed by Enrico Casarosa. This is his first feature film that he has made. Luca is a sea monster boy. He's a shepherd in the sea who discovers that he can leave the sea and look like a human boy when doing so. As long as he gets on land and dries off, he suddenly takes on the appearance of a human boy. He follows the lead of another boy whom he befriends named Alberto, who kind of shows him the way. The setting is in the beautiful islands off Italy in Porto Rosso. And Luca becomes really enamored with a picture of a Vespa while he's on land. And he decides I have to have that Vespa. And he's, while on land, kind of trying to lead this double life to keep the secret from his parents that he has left, and he has discovered this new identity. He's only a small few people know the truth about him. Alberto, his grandmother, and a couple of other folks. And as he and Alberto are traveling around, they run afoul of the local bully, a guy named Ercole Visconti, who is a big shot locally for winning the prestigious bike race in the area several times. He is a legend in his own mind in this area. And then a local girl, Julia, saves them from him and takes them to stay with her and her one-armed fisherman father, who I absolutely loved. And they decide to enter the prestigious race to win the money in order to buy the Vespa. Meanwhile, Luca's parents are on land looking for him throughout. And let me just say, I love this race that they're going to enter into, this triathlon. You have 3 events in the triathlon.
Yeah.
You've got your swimming.
Yep.
You've got your biking. You've got your
Running?
eating pasta.
Pasta.
Yeah, running and eating pasta. These are your events. I love that that's one of them. As this trio of Julia and Alberto and Luca all become kind of closer, they're friends, some jealousy forms, and Luca becomes enchanted with the life of being a normal human and going to school and all of this. And it's a sweet little message in this movie. As you would expect from most Pixar movies. They have a fun little message. You know, the parents are out looking for them. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts of Luca.
So I liked it, and it's my issue was, am I comparing Pixar? You know, Pixar, we're so conditioned now to expect greatness out of a Pixar movie.
Yeah.
They've got such a track record.
Prestige.
Yeah, and so there have been so many great Pixar movies over the years. Every Toy Story movie is great, and Up is a modern classic, I think.
Yeah.
WALL-E, these are some of my kids' favorite movies.
Yeah.
But so if I'm comparing it to Pixar's pedigree, it's not the greatest Pixar movie, but it's still better than almost any other movie that comes out. And so they're sort of their own enemy now.
Yeah.
And so I really liked it. Like I said, my kids liked it. It is extremely well made, extremely, the animation is always top notch. And the story, like I said, is not an all-time Pixar great movie, but it's still well worth your time and a great family movie. That said, I've got some, nitpicking I could certainly do with the story that, we could get into. But I don't know, did you like it?
I really enjoyed it. I think it's beautiful, like to look at,
Right.
colorful. I love the setting.
The director, Enrico, was involved with Coco, which was another movie.
He wrote Coco. He wrote Up.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't like, it's not one of those movies. It's not like Soul, which we had last year. I mean, these are big, deeply, this is a personal movie for the director. This was all set, based on his life experiences growing up in this area of Italy, and he kind of drew from that and some local legends and stuff. And so I think that's really interesting that he kind of was able to finally make his passion project through Pixar. But it doesn't have like the really heavy hitting story that you get in some of those movies that you mentioned. But I enjoyed it. I think it was fun. And the message of, chasing childhood dreams and like being afraid to go into the unknown. And, as you're a kid, I know I dealt with that of like being afraid to branch away from what's safe and what's easy. And maybe there's some kid who says like, hey, no, man, let's go do this, and you don't have to be afraid. Like, I like that message. It's more of a simplistic message than we got with like, say, Soul last year, which was much more philosophical. It's filled with fun characters. I love the design of the characters, like when they're kind of transforming between the sea monster and the human, and like sometimes part of them will get wet, and like I like that.
You mentioned the father, the one-armed father.
I loved him.
Who's a wonderful character.
Looks rough, gruff, tough, like scary.
There's some sweetness to him.
Heart of gold.
Yep. But so overall, I think it's checks all the boxes that a good Pixar movie does, if not a great movie. A couple things that bug me, like, so almost everybody, it's an Italian village, And so the parents are played by Maya Rudolph and Jim Gaffigan, which good picks for casting.
Yeah, good voice.
And the two kids, the leads and the girl, are all kind of like English-American accent voices, but then all the Italian...
Everyone else has a Giuseppe accent.
Yeah, so that sort of took me out of it. There was a little bit of an odd choice there. And then the other thing is, we talked about motivation of like this AAA rating for bodyguards. I don't get that. And the other thing is the Vespa thing. It seemed like a little bit of product placement. I don't know if I assume Vespa's they're kind of an iconic product in Italy.
Yeah.
But it's like I wanted to see them wanting something more than just going after a moped. And then but you mentioned I hadn't actually picked up on the sort of going into the unknown as much as the message at the end when they kind of get picked on or are bullied, and there's the sea monsters become this metaphor for like an other, any type of sort of persecuted,
accepting
minority, a little bit. And some people have, said that because they're two young male leads, that it's a metaphor for being gay. And I think you can kind of
you can attach that to whatever you want.
But it does have this idea of an outsider eventually sort of being accepted, because they're different.
Yeah.
And so that becomes part of it. I would have liked to have seen that sort of woven in a little more through the movie, but it in the end it sort of brings it home with some nice, good message.
There's a moment in there where Luca and Alberto, who are both sea monsters, and they're, like I say, they're kind of getting a little bit of jealousy with Julia, and Alberto's like, Luca spent a lot of time with her, not so much with me, and there's the reveal.
Yeah.
And Luca has a moment where he has to decide, and he makes a choice. It's a tough choice for a kid that age. I think a lot of kids have dealt with something similar to that of like, do I want to stick with what's cool, or do I want to be true to myself? And that's a tough choice to make. And I kind of appreciate that. I felt the pit in my stomach when that was happening. Like, oh, I remember being like that. Like, I'm finally being accepted for something. Do I want to give this all up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a coming of age tale kind of, and they're sort of going through this adolescence of trying to finding themselves. So yeah, whether that's, there's a lot of different angles you could take that. The other little thing that just bugged me was, Luca, and I'm gonna lose it here, but anyway, what was your? We'll come back to that if I think of it. I had a point. And
okay.
I lost it, but
I appreciate it. Like you said, Pixar has unfortunately set the bar so high for their products and for their projects that you expect just knock it out of the park greatness. And sometimes you do have to kind of adjust expectations of like, okay, coming in, I don't know this is a Pixar movie. Yeah. I don't see the lamp and the logo ahead of time. Like, what do I think of this? I think we're in this great, right now, like in the past 3-4 years, I feel like we're in this great renaissance of animated films. That there's been so many. Last year, I thought that was some of the best films of the year were animated films.
Yeah.
And we're going to be getting a lot of those now because of the pandemic last year. That was really the only type of film that could be worked on in 2020. I think we're going to be getting a lot of really interesting ones. So this has me excited for what we have coming in the future.
No, it's this wide palette to tell almost any kind of story that you want in any way. Yeah, and having the water coming in, and you tell a story about sea monsters. I know my complaint earlier was going to be Pixar. You're getting a little bit too male focused. So like they did Onward. That was actually the last movie I saw in the theater before the pandemic. Soul, obviously, it was Jamie Foxx was male dominated, and this is another story about two boys. And I would like to see a little more female perspectives. There is a main female character in the movie, but
it's not her story.
Right. So that was my other little nit to pick about Pixar is branch out a little bit and tell some more female oriented stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after like this huge success that Disney had with Raya. Earlier this year, where my daughter was obsessed with it because this is cool, This is
and
cool
not a romantic story.
Raya she loves Mulan, she loves Raya, she loves a girl that looks like her more, whatever, but that can be cool and doesn't have to be a damsel in distress.
I don't know if you've heard about a little movie called Frozen that made a little bit of money. Like
we watched Frozen a million times when my daughter was younger. Oh boy. Yeah. Luca, though, curious what you ended up giving it.
So I gave it 3.5 stars. For Luca, and I would have given it maybe 2.5 or 3 stars compared to a Pixar movie. But but I gave it three. I said 3 stars.
you
Sorry.
can give it
In
whatever
the
you want.
process of talking about this, I think
you
I
might
want
have
to
bumped
add.
it up as we went.
I'm going to add a little half
That's
star.
fair. That's fair. I gave it 3.5. I enjoyed it. I think it's fun. It's a film that I recommend. I think it's great for the whole family. It's beautiful. It's not. I mean, it's not an all-time classic or anything like that. But it is definitely a worthwhile way to spend your time, especially if you have children. You put something on that'll keep the whole family entertained. It's not like some of the animated films where it's like this is definitely made for the children and not for me.
That's called a nap for me.
Yeah, exactly. We have plenty of those. One of the things that I've been really enjoying about this having special guests is for our movie throwback segment. I have them pick a film to talk about. Takes all the work off my hands, and we've been having a lot of fun discussing films that we haven't before. So, sir, I gave you the option to choose any film in the universe, and what did you select for the throwback this week?
So it was kind of a tough choice because there are a lot of movies I've seen a lot of times, but I ended up on Midnight Run. And I watched Midnight Run for the first time just a few months ago when Charles Grodin passed away.
Sure.
It was a movie I had never seen. It was kind of on that cusp, so late 80s. I think it came out in 1988.
Yep.
I was not allowed to watch R-rated movies in my house until I got a little bit older, and so I sort of missed out. You know, I would have been like 9 years old in 1988. So I missed out on that, and I just had never gone back to it. But movie I always wanted to see, and so when Charles Grodin passed away, I checked it out. It holds up fantastically. So I've only seen this movie one time. I didn't get a chance to even watch it again for this, but it's a movie I'd like to watch over and over again because it's.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's deep. You mentioned you'd seen it multiple times.
Yeah.
But it's first of all, it's just fun as hell. It's nonstop. Just one action sequence, kind of after the other. But then it's intermingled with all this really smart, intelligent, interesting dialogue. And it's sort of this morality play and ethical questions masquerading as an action comedy. And so you have just a fun action comedy movie, but with a bunch of really interesting questions and, like I said, morality and ethical dilemmas that these characters are dealing with. Charles Grodin and Robert De Niro, both fantastic actors, fantastic performances. So, this was sort of post-Taxi Driver.
This was like De Niro.
Godfather 2, but before I analyze this and Meet the Parents, before he became a comedy star.
That's what I kind of wanted to ask you about. So this was really like his first true comedy. He had The King of Comedy a few years earlier, which was
a dramatic performance.
It was his Taxi Driver character set in a new world, basically.
Right.
He was still scary. So this was really his first comedy. And
but it's not like set up punchline.
No, it isn't. But it was like
comedy.
him trading in his bona fides as Robert De Niro, who's been on this amazing, like, historic run of
I think he'd won an Oscar
films.
for Raging Bull at that point already.
Yes, I mean, and he was the big actor at the time, very serious thespian, and then he does something that is comedic, and I've always said that this was where, when people said, "Oh man, you were great in a comedy," that this hung in his head and is responsible for what we've gotten over the last 20 years, where he's like, "I'm going to make Dirty Grandpa. People love me in comedy."
To blame it, and the sad part, I guess, about some of the bad comedies he's made is people will say, I think some comedians or comedic actors will tell you that acting in a comedy is almost harder.
Yeah.
And this, to me, was a thespian, one of the finest actors of our generation, doing, not necessarily, like I said, telling jokes, but in a comedic role where he's a little bit of the straight man sometimes, and having to play this character that's funny but still sell it and not still be real.
Yeah.
And just a fantastic performance.
I love that you come to it with fresh eyes, never having seen it before, a movie like this, and it holds up, because I have a lot of nostalgia attached to it. Robert De Niro was my favorite actor all growing up.
Yeah.
I just loved him, was obsessed, and this was the first time I saw a movie where he wasn't like insane for the most part.
Right.
Wow, this is really interesting. And so I love this movie, and I love because I'd seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles before this, and I was like, oh, this turns into like a Planes, Trains, and Automobile movie, only it's a little more intense, without John Candy and Steve Martin. But I think it's a great mix of action and comedy, and like we were talking about with Hitman's Bodyguard, there is nuance to these characters. We get to know these characters. They take the time to have interplay between them, and it's not just, bang, we got to get to the next set. We got to get to the next piece.
So Hitman's Bodyguard, very similar formula to
Yes.
Midnight Run. These two guys who don't really get along, oil and water, but then they're sort of thrown into, and then they've got the FBI chasing them. They've got the mob chasing
great
them.
Characters
They've
in
got
this movie.
Yaphet Kotto plays this FBI agent. He's a Shakespearean type of actor. I mean, a lot of pedigree.
Oh yeah,
And-
Joey Pants and Philip Baker Hall, Dennis Farina just playing himself basically and everything.
Plays a mob
Yeah.
boss, and so just a ton of firepower in the supporting characters. But and so directed by Martin Brest.
Yeah,
who-
coming off of Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, so here he's one of the most fascinating directors of Beverly Hills Cop, which I think was the most successful R-rated comedy
Ever.
for years, if not
Up until the Hangover movies came out.
Okay. So, and one of my favorite, made Eddie Murphy a star. Then he does this very similar kind of action comedy,
Yeah.
but even ratchets it up another level in terms of the dialogue and the smart, intelligence. And then Scent of a Woman, which
Right. Wins Pacino an Oscar.
right, and deals with some of the same sort of ethical questions.
Yeah.
And then makes Meet Joe Black,
Right.
which is one of the most boring.
The only reason I saw that
dull-
movie was because in the theaters, it was where they had the first trailer for Star Wars Episode 1.
So you just
And
went
I
for the
remember
trailer.
watching the first 10 minutes of that movie several times as we would go and just catch that trailer again.
Right.
Because there was no internet to go watch the trailers.
Yeah. But Brad Pitt at his most beautiful
Yeah.
top, and Anthony Hopkins, and it's
So
just the
bad.
dreariest, dull, boring movie. And then makes Geely.
Yeah.
And interesting that Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez
together.
So I remember watching Geely thinking this is there was some interesting parts in it. Do you remember that movie at all?
Oh, I remember it. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
not. It's terrible. It bombed. It was this sort of.
This was kind of the end of Affleck's career for a while too.
And I don't think Martin Brest has made a movie since.
I don't believe so.
So he's just fascinated. Just went on this run, but I think peaked, in my opinion, with Midnight Run.
I think so too. I really enjoy it. One of the things I enjoy was when I found out, I was doing some research years ago and found out that how De Niro ended up in this movie.
Okay.
So he had originally been trying to get the lead role in Big, the Tom Hanks movie.
Oh, okay.
He
Wow.
was originally trying to get in there, and the studio was like, no.
Yeah.
So Martin Brest
Well,
offered
that would have
him-
been a totally different movie.
Right.
But,
So Martin Brest offered him this role, but then the studio said, great, but then we want Robin Williams in the Charles Grodin role. He's going to be the dude.
Oh,
So it was going
wow.
to be De Niro and Robin Williams, and Martin Brest tried out Charles Grodin without even talking to Robin Williams. The studio talked to Robin, set it all up,
Yeah.
and Martin Brest offered Charles Grodin the role without even talking to Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And it's this weird
and
configuration of how we got to this.
yeah, and those are all different.
Yes.
Probably
It
really
would've been
good, but
Robin Williams,
totally different.
way different energy than Charles Grodin. Like
100%.
different ends of the comedy spectrum of energy.
It's interesting because I saw Albert Brooks in the Charles Grodin role. I mean,
Sure,
the same sort of like
That's very similar.
nebbishy, neurotic.
Yeah.
But I got the impression that he would have worked. Ironically, like played a mobster later with in Drive. Which was sort of an interesting choice in that. But yeah, Charles Grodin, he's perfect in it. He's just this
He's
perfect
the
foil.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite lines is when he's talking to De Niro. He's like, you only have two emotions: silence and rage.
We know people like that.
Right.
So yeah, Midnight Run. Check it out. Absolutely. Holds up.
Absolutely. Check it out. It is. It's one of my favorites and a great choice by you. I love it. Let's take a look ahead, though, at what is coming soon, the weekend of July 2nd, the big holiday weekend. We've got a few movies coming out. That weekend we have The Forever Purge, the fifth film. I can't believe we got there. The fifth film in the Purge franchise. If you love those, this is another one of lawlessness in a city. What's going to happen? Who knows? We also have Boss Baby 2, unfortunately the second film in this franchise. I was not. We're talking about nap movies for adults. These Boss Baby movies.
Yeah, this is go downstairs, kids, and put this on the Netflix. I don't need to watch.
Fit the bill for this one. But Boss Baby 2 will be coming out July 2nd. And over on streaming, we are going to have a film called The Tomorrow War, which is a time travel action adventure film starring Chris Pratt, J.K. Simmons, Betty Gilpin, and Sam Richardson. Looks really interesting. That will be streaming that week. Before we move any further, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, the Palace here in Sun Prairie, for sponsoring this program. We do appreciate you showing us movies anytime we come in to watch one, sit in a beautiful dream lounger in that air conditioning. Andy, thank you for joining me on the show. I really appreciate it.
It was awesome.
Tell people what shows you have and where they can find them.
Yeah, so I host a podcast and radio show. You can catch that on 103.5 The Sun at 2 and 4 at 2 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then it's available as a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for What Are We Building? So yeah, check that out. And then I'm going to be hosting a new show, Jamison mentioned, called Roundabout Sun Prairie. Kind of a talk show about local issues here. So that's something to check out too.
Be on the lookout for that on your K-Sun, wherever you might find that. And you can find us if we're on Facebook and Instagram. Real Reviews TV is where you can find us. Next week, I'm going to be talking about F9, Fatherhood, The Ice Road. I'll be joined by my buddy Gershon Porter for all of that. But until that time, I'm Jamison.
Andy Schoenherr.
Thanks for watching.